Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video in which we will discuss the negative aspects of Rihanna's cosmetics line, Fenty Beauty. Rihanna is not being disparaged in any way by this. However, Fenty has recently found itself in some controversy, so it would be interesting to review all the highs and lows the company has experienced since its 2017 launch. So in 2013, Rihanna, real name Robin Rihanna Fenty, registered her last name as a trademark for use on a variety of goods other than music, which is what she was most known for at the time. As a result, there was anticipation that she would soon begin a number of additional commercial ventures. Fenty Beauty was one such brand, and it was released in September 2017, 4 years later. So Rihanna did have some makeup experience prior to this, having released products in collaboration with MAC, but this was her first solo beauty venture. Fenty Beauty was developed in partnership with LVMH, which is Louis Vuitton Mo Hennessy, a huge luxury group company who signed Rihanna in 2016 to produce Fenty Beauty through their incubator company, Kendall Holdings Limited. So Kendall Holdings Limited is essentially an umbrella company who hosts and develops a number of brands, including KVD, Beauty, and Bite Beauty. Although Fenty Beauty and now Fenty Skin are two of their most prominent and lucrative holdings, they create what are known as white label products, which are products that are produced by a company but can be rebranded to look like they were created by other companies. So, Kendo would make the products and then Fenty Beauty would add their branding to it. The initial launch happened on September 8, 2017, and consisted of a 40-shade foundation range, which spoke to Rihanna's vision behind the brand, which was to create a fully inclusive line for all skin tones, and the products were initially launched in Sephora and on FY Beauty's website in the US, and in Harvey Nichols stores in the UK, and were received extremely well. This was the first time a brand had made such an inclusive range with literally anyone being able to find a shade that would match their skin tone. So for this to be Fenty Beauty's first product, people were extremely impressed by this brand, and the brand actually set the tone in the cosmetics industry for what a full shade range should look like for base products. Because before this, brands just were not hitting the mark, and even when other companies like Morphe tried to one-up Fenty by coming out with a 60-shade foundation range. Fenty was always renowned from this point for being the most inclusive and the go-to brand for customers with deeper skin tones to find an exact match, because deeper skin tones seemingly were what brands just forgot about. They would have like 30 shades of white and then 3 shades of non-white, and people were just sick of it. So when Fenty Beauty came up with this massive range that seemed to have every tone and every undertone, people were really excited and impressed by this. And following this launch, pretty much every brand who launched a foundation had their shade range compared to Fenty Beauty's benchmark, which is an incredible impact for a brand to have on its first launch, and seemingly indicated that this was not going to be another celebrity brand that gets left in the dust and would instead go on to be a successful cosmetics giant in its own. And within 1 month of releasing its first launch, Fenty Beauty was valued at $72 million, which is huge for a brand with only a couple of products, with Harvey Nichols reportedly selling 1 Fenty Beauty foundation and 3 lipsticks every minute, making it the store's biggest ever beauty launch. And the brand continued to launch more products during 2018, including their Killawatt highlighter, their Stunner lip paint in various shades, and by the end of 2018 had reached $570 million in sales after only 15 months of operation, which is absolutely insane. And Fenty Beauty was also praised during 2018 for its inclusion. People of color, male makeup influencers are members of the trans community in its adverts. Again, something that other brands hadn't really branched out into yet, with a lot of them sticking with the standard, mostly white female models, with 1 or 2 token people of color in their ads. Fenty was very much sticking to this agenda of being a brand that everyone could go to, regardless of their gender or their skin color. And people loved that they were actually committing to diversity as a value rather than using it as a marketing tool, but not really caring about it past what profit it could bring them. And Fenty have launched a number of other successful products since 2018, including the Gloss Bomb lip glosses and the Pro Filter concealer. However, whilst the company was valued at a whopping $2.8 billion in August 2021, more than double what Kylie Cosmetics was valued at when Kylie sold her majority share, it hasn't been smooth sailing the whole time. So, in April 2019, Fenty expanded their line of Killawatt highlighters with a number of new shades, one of which was named Geisha Chic. So the brand suffered backlash as a result of this name because people argued that it was racist and offensive to those of Asian descent, as there is a long history of oppression and fetishization in geisha culture, and the name/concept of geishas is constantly misused and misrepresented in Western culture. So people were unhappy with an influencer not of Asian descent using the term on makeup for profit. And the brand did respond pretty quickly by removing all reference to the shade name on their Instagram, and they actually responded to someone in a private DM confirming that the shade had been pulled and would be renamed before launch, and thanked that person for bringing this to their attention and educating them on why the shade name was offensive. And this went down pretty well. People were satisfied to see that they'd swiftly taken on board the criticism and responded to it instead of waiting for it to become a huge scandal like makeup brands often do, considering their biggest selling point is their inclusivity. It's not really surprising that they wanted to rid their line of all traces of a culturally inappropriate product name. The fans were pretty satisfied with this response, and it didn't really tarnish their reputation at all. By this point, they were no longer in the news brand because they'd been around for about 2 years, so people were more used to Fenty Beauty just kind of being there. So there wasn't as much talk as there would have been if this had happened in 2018, because they were starting to become a staple brand rather than like a new, exciting brand. And things went back to normal after this, and by normal, I mean extremely successful, with the brand launching into Boots in the UK in 2019 to become more widely available, and in 17 new countries around the world opening up its own stores in some countries like Saudi Arabia. However, probably the brand's biggest controversy to date came in 2021, which actually spiraled from a tweet from Rihanna supporting the farmers' protests in India. So the farmers' protests have begun in December 2020 and had been ongoing for 3 months at this point, when Rihanna tweeted a link to a news article about the farmers' protest in February 2021, asking why the world was not talking more about what was going on. So the protests were against 3 new laws proposed by the government, and the protest had on multiple occasions become violent, with protesters killed or seriously injured, with the government at one point shutting down mobile phone service in 3 areas around New Delhi, where the protesters were heavily congregated. So Rihanna didn't necessarily offer an opinion on the topic. It was implied that she was in support of the farmers, and following her tweet, the Indian government condemned foreign celebrities and media getting involved with the protest in a way that was not accurate or responsible. However, her seeming support for human rights in India was tarnished when literally days later a number of news outlets reported that Fenty Beauty was allegedly creating their products using mica, which had been farmed through child labor in India. So Via Joshi of the activist organization Legal Rights Observatory filed the complaint to seek an investigation from the National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights on the source of Fenty Beauty's mica, alleging that Fenty Beauty was using child labor to extract blood mica from mines in Jharkhand, one of India's poorest regions. It was alleged that Fenty Beauty did not have the correct certification to prove that it did not use child labor in the production of its products, and it didn't help. But right before this, Fenty had publicly stated that they don't audit their suppliers, and instead they simply expect its direct product suppliers to adhere to and to implement our suppliers' code of conduct, which addresses working conditions for suppliers and specifically prohibits the use of involuntary or forced labor, human trafficking, child labor, and harassment and abuse. This is not great for a company of this size, because when you are using labor from a part of the world that is known to have children working in forced labor conditions, you should be auditing your suppliers to make sure that you have evidence that you are complying with your policies, and that they are not part of that majority who are using child labor. The fact that they don't carry out any audits almost implied that they are deliberately turning a blind eye, knowing that there's a good chance that the suppliers are lying about their compliance with that code of conduct. Around 70% of mica mines in India are unregulated by the government, so it's entirely down to the mine owners, how they treat their workers. So in using these mines, it's of paramount importance that a company carries out their own audits to ensure that regulations are not being broken, because if they don't do that audit, then no one will, and that supplier can essentially do whatever they want. And to put in perspective how bad the situation with mica mining is, a 2018 NCPCR report pegged the number of children from Koderma and Giridih, the 2 mica-rich districts of Jharkhand, dropping out of school to mine mica at 4,545, so that's nearly 5,000 children who are out of school working in those mines. And a report before that, an NGO estimated that 22,000 children were involved in scavenging for mica in Jharkhand and the neighboring state of Bihar. So there are a lot of children in this area who are being put into forced labor in these mines because they are from very poor families and they've been offered money, and Fenty is basically turning a blind eye to all of that. So, those were some dark secrets that most companies want to hide from us. And this ends our video here. See you in the next one.